If you are being honest with yourself, you're not exhausted because nothing is working. You're exhausted because you keep trying to make everything work. You have been gripping your life with both hands, tightening your focus, analyzing every detail, watching every sign, measuring every delay, and quietly wondering why it still feels heavy. That heaviness is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are forcing. And forcing is the one habit that silently cancels momentum before it has a chance to build. There is a misunderstanding that effort equals progress. You were taught that if you want something badly enough, you lean in harder, you think about it more, you plan more, you improve yourself more, you strategize more, you correct yourself more, you fix yourself more. And on the surface, that sounds mature and disciplined. But underneath that constant effort is a subtle tension that says, it is not here yet, and I need to make it happen. That inner posture of not yet is what keeps the experience just out of reach. Stop doing that. Stop chasing the result as if it is running away from you. Stop checking to see if it arrived. Stop refreshing the screen of your life. Stop monitoring the timeline. Stop interpreting every delay as proof that something is wrong. The more you scan for absence, the more your nervous system registers lack as reality. And your nervous system does not respond to your goals. It responds to your state. When your body feels urgency, it contracts. When it contracts, your perception narrows. When perception narrows, creativity shrinks. And when creativity shrinks, you default to the same patterns that have not worked before. That is why trying harder often leads to repeating the same results with more exhaustion attached to them. The problem is not that you have not tried enough. The problem is that you have been trying from tension. There is a difference between committed action and compensating action. Committed action feels grounded. It feels clean. It feels like you are moving forward because it makes sense. Compensating action feels anxious. It feels like you're trying to outrun doubt. It feels like if you do not act immediately, something will collapse. Most people confuse the two. They believe that anxiety equals passion. It does not. Anxiety equals fear disguised as productivity. Pause and think about the times in your life when things unfolded naturally, when conversations flowed without rehearsal, when opportunities appeared at the exact moment you needed them, when solutions came to you while you were not actively searching. Those moments did not arrive because you squeezed life harder. They arrived because you relaxed your grip long enough for clarity to surface. Relaxation is not laziness. It is alignment without strain. So what should you stop doing? Stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios in your mind. Stop telling yourself you are behind. Stop comparing your timeline to someone else's highlight reel. Stop interpreting silence as rejection. Stop assuming that if you're not constantly working on it, you are losing progress. Those internal habits create a baseline of tension, and tension is not the energy of creation. It is the energy of defense. When you defend against lack, you reinforce it. When you brace against uncertainty, you amplify it. When you obsess over outcomes, you distance yourself from the state that allows them to unfold. The outer world is not responding to the words you say. It is responding to the posture you hold internally. If your posture is clenched, guarded, and urgent, your results will mirror that same quality of strain. There is a subtle power in subtraction. Instead of asking what technique you need to add, ask what mental habit you need to remove. Instead of adding more affirmations, remove the habit of self-criticism. Instead of adding more strategies, remove the habit of overanalyzing. Instead of adding more effort, remove the fear that everything depends solely on you. When you remove what constricts you, what remains is clarity. You were not designed to wrestle your life into position. Growth does not require panic. Expansion does not require constant pressure. The idea that you must suffer your way into success is one of the most deeply ingrained beliefs you were handed. But that belief creates exhaustion, not evolution. The more you attempt to push the river, the more resistance you feel. The river moves when you step into it, not when you try to shove it forward. Here is something practical you can begin doing immediately. Notice your physical cues. Notice when your breath shortens. Notice when your jaw tightens. Notice when your thoughts speed up. Those are signals that you are entering forcing mode. Instead of reacting, pause. Take one full breath. Relax your shoulders. Ask yourself, what would this look like if I trusted it? That single shift moves you from control into cooperation. You do not attract what you want by obsessing over it. You attract what you want by becoming stable enough to receive it. Stability is magnetic. Stability does not rush. Stability does not plead. Stability does not constantly scan for proof. It moves when it is time to move and rests when it is time to rest. That energy feels different in your body. It feels steady instead of urgent. Stop doing anything that reinforces the story that you are not there yet. Stop narrating your delays. Stop magnifying your obstacles. Stop rehearsing disappointment before it even happens. Every time you repeat the story of struggle, you strengthen it. Every time you rehearse trust, you strengthen that instead. The world responds to the frequency you practice most consistently. Change does not come from adding more force. It comes from removing resistance. Resistance is often hidden inside the thought, if I do not control this, it will not work. That thought creates tension. Tension creates contraction. Contraction limits possibility. The moment you loosen that grip, you create space. And in space, clarity emerges. In clarity, aligned action becomes obvious. So before you try harder again, pause and ask yourself a better question. Not, what should I do next, but what should I stop doing right now? The answer is rarely dramatic. It is usually simple. Stop chasing, stop bracing, stop proving, stop forcing. Because the breakthrough you are waiting for is not waiting on more effort. It is waiting on less resistance. There is something almost addictive about the feeling of pushing. It gives you the illusion of control. It convinces you that as long as you're doing something, you are moving forward. But motion is not the same as momentum. You can run in place for years and still feel like you're progressing simply because you're exhausted. Exhaustion has become a badge of honor in this culture. If you're tired, you must be trying. If you're stressed, you must be committed. If you're overwhelmed, you must be serious. But none of those states guarantee alignment. In fact, they often signal that you are operating from fear rather than clarity. When you keep pushing, what you're really doing is reinforcing the belief that where you are is not enough. That belief becomes the background noise of your life. It hums beneath every action you take. Even when you succeed at something, the relief is temporary because the underlying story has not changed. The story still says, it is not here yet. I am not there yet. I need to do more. So the cycle repeats. You achieve, you relax for a moment, and then you tighten again. That tightening is what quietly blocks the results you are trying to create. The paradox is this: the more desperate you are for something, the more distant it feels. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because desperation narrows your awareness. When you are desperate for money, you only see the bills. When you are desperate for love, you only see the absence. When you are desperate for success, you only see the gap between you and the goal. Your focus collapses into what is missing, and your nervous system organizes itself around lack. From that state, every action is contaminated with subtle urgent. People can feel it. Opportunities respond to it, and you end up reinforcing the very pattern you are trying to escape. If you want practical change, start by regulating your internal pace. Slow your thinking down. Notice how quickly your mind jumps to what if it does not work. Notice how often you replay conversations, predict rejection, or anticipate disappointment before anything has happened. That habit of pre-living failure keeps your body in a mild state of stress. Stress signals threat. When your system feels threatened, it prioritizes protection over expansion. And protection does not create growth. It creates safety routines that keep everything familiar. A simple daily practice can interrupt this cycle. Before you take action towards your goal, ask yourself what state you're in. Are you calm or are you anxious? Are you grounded or are you rushing? If you are rushing, pause before proceeding. Take 2 or 3 slow breaths and consciously relax your body. Then ask, if I trusted that this was already unfolding, how would I move right now? That question recalibrates your energy. It shifts you from chasing the outcome to embodying the version of you who expects it. There is also a mental habit you must be willing to release. Stop measuring your progress every day. Progress in inner alignment does not show up like a scoreboard. It shows up in subtle shifts in how you respond. Maybe you react less intensely. Maybe you recover from disappointment faster. Maybe you speak with more steadiness. Those are signs of alignment strengthening. But if you are constantly checking for visible proof, you will overlook the invisible restructuring that is actually creating sustainable change. Another area where pushing shows up is in over-consuming information. You watch video after video, read book after book, search for the next technique that will finally make it click. But information does not replace integration. Sometimes the most powerful step you can take is to stop searching for new answers and apply one principle consistently. Choose one belief that feels stable and live from it. Not aggressively, not perfectly, just consistently. Depth beats volume every time. You are not meant to operate in constant urgency. Your system functions best when it feels safe. Safety creates openness. Openness creates creativity. Creativity generates solutions you could not see when you were tense. Think back to moments when insight arrived unexpectedly. It probably happened when you were relaxed, distracted, or doing something unrelated. That is not random. That is what happens when your system is not in fight or flight mode. It allows new connections to form. Stop assuming that intensity equals effectiveness. Stop believing that if you relax, everything will fall apart. That belief is often inherited. You learned it from watching adults who equated struggle with worth. But worth is not measured by strain. In fact, the more secure you feel internally, the less dramatic your path needs to be. Stability creates consistent progress. Consistency compounds. Compounding builds momentum without chaos. There is a quiet confidence that replaces pushing when you begin to trust the process. It does not shout. It does not rush. It simply moves when it is time to move. It does not interpret every delay as failure. It understands that timing is not always visible from your current vantage point. When you operate from that steadiness, your decisions become cleaner. You say no more easily, you stop over-explaining yourself, you stop trying to prove your worth. That alone changes the trajectory of your life. What you stop doing determines the space available for what you want. If you stop replaying doubt, you create space for clarity. If you stop chasing validation, you create space for confidence. If you stop forcing timelines, you create space for flow. The removal of resistance is not passive. It is intentional restraint. It is choosing not to indulge the habit of panic. It is deciding that your peace matters more than your obsession with the outcome. Nothing changes until your internal posture changes. When the posture softens, your perception widens. When perception widens, opportunities become visible. When opportunities become visible, action feels natural instead of forced. And that is how results begin to shift. Not through louder effort, not through more pressure, but through the disciplined choice to stop feeding the patterns that keep you tense. The question is not whether you can work hard. You already can. The real question is whether you can release the addiction to urgency long enough to let something different emerge. That release is not weakness. It is maturity. It is the recognition that force has limits, but alignment does not. There is another layer to this that rarely gets discussed, and it is uncomfortable because it requires radical honesty. Sometimes you are not blocked because you are not doing enough. You're blocked because you are doing the right things from the wrong identity. On the surface, your habits look productive. You wake up early, you plan, you execute, you set goals. But underneath it all, the version of you that is acting still believes something limiting. It might believe that success is fragile. It might believe that love leaves. It might believe that money disappears as quickly as it arrives. And so, even as you build, there is tension in the foundation. That tension leaks into everything. It leaks into how you speak about your progress. It leaks into how you respond to setbacks. It leaks into the speed at which you try to secure the outcome before it feels threatened. You can work extremely hard and still operate from insecurity, and insecurity, even when dressed up as ambition, eventually distorts the result. If you want something different, you have to examine what you believe about having it. Not just getting it, having it, sustaining it, living with it. Because if part of you believes that it is too good to last, You will unconsciously sabotage it the moment it arrives. You will tighten. You will over-control. You will question it. And the strain you place on it will create the very instability you feared. This is why trying harder is not the answer. Trying harder does not address the identity underneath the effort. It only increases the intensity of the pattern. Instead of asking how you can push more, ask who you are being while you push. Are you acting like someone who expects this to work out, or like someone who is trying to outrun failure? The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. A practical shift begins with language. Listen to how you describe your goals. Do you say, "I hope this works"? Or do you say, "This is unfolding"? Do you say, "If I can just make this happen"? Or do you say, "I am building this"? The nervous system responds to language. Hope implies uncertainty. Building implies direction. Making something happen implies force. Allowing something to unfold implies participation with trust. Small adjustments in phrasing recalibrate your internal posture. Another usable step is to limit how often you rehearse worst-case scenarios. Many people call this being realistic. In reality, it is a rehearsal of defeat. When you constantly imagine what could go wrong, your body reacts as if it already has. Cortisol rises. Muscles tighten. Your breathing becomes shallow. And then you attempt to perform, create, or connect from that constricted state. It is no surprise that the outcome feels strained. Before important actions, consciously rehearse steadiness instead. Imagine yourself responding calmly. Imagine yourself adjusting with flexibility. This builds familiarity with stability instead of crisis. There is also the matter of comparison. Comparison fuels unnecessary effort because it distorts your timeline. You look at someone else's visible outcome and assume you are behind, but you are not measuring the same variables. You do not know their starting point. You do not know their internal state. You do not know the compromises they made to get there. Yet the mind creates urgency anyway. That urgency becomes pressure, and pressure makes you forget your own rhythm. Your rhythm matters more than someone else's pace. When you move in alignment with your own capacity, your actions compound sustainably. When you move in reaction to someone else's highlight reel, you burn out. Burnout is not a badge of honor. It is a signal that you are operating beyond alignment. Recovery is not weakness. It is recalibration. Another subtle habit to stop is over-explaining your vision. The more you feel the need to justify what you are building, the less secure you feel in it. Confidence does not need constant validation. It does not need everyone to agree. When you constantly seek reassurance, you fragment your focus. You begin adjusting your direction based on opinions instead of intuition. This scatters energy. Scattered energy produces scattered results. Try this instead. Choose one decision you have been hesitating on because you wanted more external approval. Make it quietly. Sit with it. Notice that the world does not collapse. Notice that you are capable of tolerating uncertainty. Building that internal tolerance is more powerful than any external endorsement. Stability grows from inside outward. Another reason effort becomes resistance is because you are trying to control variables that are not yours. You cannot control how quickly someone responds. You cannot control how the market shifts. You cannot control when inspiration strikes for another person. Yet many people spend enormous energy attempting to manage those variables. That energy would be better invested in refining what you can influence. Your preparation, your clarity, your skill, your emotional steadiness. When you reallocate energy from control to mastery, something shifts. You feel less frantic because you are not trying to manipulate outcomes. You are strengthening your capacity. Capacity attracts opportunity because it signals readiness. Desperation repels it because it signals instability. Pay attention to the difference between urgency and importance. Urgency screams. Importance is steady. Urgency demands immediate validation. Importance understands that consistency builds credibility. If everything feels urgent, nothing is grounded. Begin distinguishing between what truly requires immediate action and what simply triggers anxiety. This discernment alone reduces unnecessary pressure. The quiet truth is that sustainable results come from alignment, not adrenaline. Adrenaline feels powerful, but it is not designed for long-term creation. It is designed for short-term survival. You do not build a stable life from a survival state. You build it from clarity, patience, and deliberate choice. You are not blocked because you are incapable. You are blocked because you are over-tightening the process. Release does not mean inaction. It means precision. It means choosing actions that feel clean instead of frantic. It means trusting that steadiness compounds faster than panic ever will. And when you begin operating from that steadiness, you will notice that things move differently. Not because you pushed harder, but because you stopped reinforcing the identity that believed you had to. There is a deeper shift that has to occur if you want this to truly land, and it has nothing to do with tactics. It has to do with your relationship to time. One of the most destructive patterns people fall into is measuring their progress too frequently. They plant something, then dig it up mentally every single day to check if it has grown. They start a new habit, then immediately evaluate whether it is working. They change their mindset, then look around to see if the world has rearranged itself yet. This constant checking creates subtle tension, and that tension communicates doubt. When you check too often, you are signaling that you do not trust the process, and that lack of trust feeds urgency. Urgency feeds pressure. Pressure feeds overcorrection. Overcorrection pulls you out of alignment. Then you interpret the misalignment as proof that it is not working. This is how effort becomes resistance in a loop that feels logical, but is actually self-perpetuating. A powerful correction is to widen your time horizon. Instead of asking, is this working today? Ask, if I continue this for 6 months, who will I become? That question shifts your focus from outcome to identity. Identity evolves through repetition, not obsession. If you focus on becoming the kind of person who shows up consistently, the results will eventually have to reflect that. The outer world cannot ignore sustained internal change forever. There is also the issue of emotional attachment. Wanting something is natural, but gripping it tightly creates distortion. When you are overly attached to a specific outcome happening in a specific way, you narrow your perception. You reject alternative paths because they do not match the picture in your head. Meanwhile, opportunities may be presenting themselves in forms you did not expect, but you cannot see them because you are staring at the blueprint instead of the doorway. Try practicing flexible focus. Hold the essence of what you want firmly, but hold the form loosely. If you want freedom, do not obsess over only one way it can arrive. If you want abundance, do not restrict it to one channel. If you want connection, do not assume it must come from one person. When you release rigidity, you expand your field of awareness. Expanded awareness increases probability. Another practical adjustment is learning to sit with discomfort without immediately reacting. Growth always introduces unfamiliar territory. Unfamiliar territory triggers uncertainty. Uncertainty triggers the urge to control. But if you can pause and let the discomfort exist without scrambling to fix it, you develop emotional range. Emotional range is strength. It allows you to continue forward motion without collapsing into panic or retreat. This does not mean ignoring problems. It means responding instead of reacting. When something does not go as planned, notice the first impulse. Is it to blame yourself, to blame someone else, to rush into a new strategy, to declare that nothing works? That first impulse is often conditioned. Instead of obeying it automatically, take a breath. Ask what the situation actually requires. Sometimes it requires adjustment, sometimes it requires patience, sometimes it requires rest. Discernment replaces desperation. There is another subtle pattern that blocks results: over-identifying with struggle. If you have spent years being the resilient one, the strong one, the one who survives difficulty, part of your identity may be attached to hardship. If things become easy, you might unconsciously create complexity to maintain that familiar narrative. Ease can feel suspicious if you're not used to it. Begin normalizing ease in small ways. Allow simple wins without minimizing them. Accept help without explaining why you deserve it. Let tasks be straightforward without adding unnecessary complications. When you practice allowing ease in minor areas, you train your nervous system to tolerate it in major areas. Your internal baseline matters. If your baseline state is tension, even success will feel unstable. If your baseline state is steadiness, even setbacks will feel manageable. So build steadiness deliberately. Sleep consistently. Move your body. Reduce input that overstimulates you. Protect your focus. These are not motivational slogans. They are structural supports for your mental clarity. You cannot create expansive results from a chronically exhausted mind. You cannot sustain growth from a depleted body. If you keep trying to override these basics with more strategy, you will continue to hit invisible ceilings. Alignment is not mystical. It is physiological and psychological coherence. When your habits support your clarity, your decisions improve. Improved decisions compound. The shift you are making is from forcing to allowing without becoming passive. Allowing is not laziness. It is confident participation. It is taking action from stability instead of panic. It is choosing direction instead of chasing validation. When you embody that difference consistently, you begin to notice something remarkable. You are no longer trying to make life cooperate. Life begins cooperating with you because you are no longer fighting it. This is not about surrendering ambition. It is about refining it. Ambition rooted in insecurity exhausts you. Ambition rooted in self-trust energizes you. One demands constant proof. The other builds quietly. And quiet building, repeated daily, is what eventually reshapes your entire trajectory. So, if you want different results, stop asking how you can try harder. Ask where you are tightening unnecessarily. Ask where you are measuring too frequently. Ask where you are gripping too tightly. Release those patterns first. Because what you stop reinforcing often matters more than what you start doing.